Hey everyone, it's patch 3.22 Ancestor, and I wanted to do a guide on something I don't think many people know about, and that is remapping heisting. Now, this is not going to be infinite heist, if you know what infinite heist is. This is going to be a different strategy, which involves us picking up contracts from the contract vendor every time we level up, all the way from Act 6 to Act 10, and then right before Katava, running all of these contracts. Now, the reason you might want to do this is because this strategy will make you around 100 to 150 chaos, depending on if you get a little bit lucky and if you decide to do the chaos recipe. If you do the chaos recipe, you actually might make upwards to 200C. And this is really good if you are playing a build that really needs some uniques to get going. So, for example, quite a lot of builds aren't really league start viable because they need specific uniques. And making that money might be a little bit hard. So people typically play other builds, at least for like the first day or two, to be able to afford their uniques. A good example of this is I'll be playing Impending Doom next season. And Impending Doom needs Vixens and ideally Apeps as well to really feel good. And both of those together cost around 40 chaos or so day one. Well, what I could do is I could do early heisting, which will take me about an hour and a half to maybe upwards to 3 hours. It really depends on the builds. For example, if you're playing a minion build, it might take you closer to 3 hours. But if you're playing something zoomy like Poison Concoction or Toxic Rain or any sort of clear oriented build, it'll probably take you closer to an hour and a half or two. And again, it depends on how efficient you are. But in that short time, I'll be able to make over 100C. And that means I'll be able to buy Vixens, Apeps, a 6-link, and maybe some decent rares for 5 to 10 chaos each in each slot, which will just allow me to plow through maps really quickly and allow me to get to tier 16 maps and start farming altars or start farming whatever other activity I want really quickly. So this could be really, really good for any other build like that really needs some sort of boost to really get going before their build is very viable. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing they're going to need is you are going to need a rogue marker drop. Now, rogue markers cannot start dropping until Act 6 when you actually unlock Heist. And before, they used to drop on the first mob you kill in Act 6, but unfortunately they've been nerfed ever since, and it's now random. So it could take you all the way up until Act 9, Act 10, maybe even until maps for you to see your first rogue marker drop. But realistically, for maybe 80 to 90% of people, you're going to see your first drop within maybe the end of Act 6 or around Act 7 at the latest. The other thing you could do as well is maybe look for a smuggler's cash drop, or maybe you can even ask a friend to see if they've gotten any rogue markers and to ask to borrow them. You don't need many. You only need around 40 or so to get going, which would be 1 drop or 1 cash or just a few from a friend. And then you can start this as soon as you get them. All you're going to be doing as soon as you do get your markers is you're going to stop everything you're doing and you're going to immediately use a marker in town to come to the Rogue Harbor. Now, once you are here, you're going to immediately talk to Karai. She's going to give you a quest to talk to everyone in the Rogue Harbor. Then you're going to get another follow-up quest to go on a mission with Cross and to do a basic contract. You want to do this contract immediately at Adaya. You do not want to wait any time, because this first contract that you're going to be running will be giving you access to the Heist Locker. Now, do not accidentally put your markers in here before unlocking the Heist Locker through that quest, because if you leave, then you are soft locked. This Heist Locker does not show up in your hideout unless you do the quest. And if you do that, you'd have to wait until you get another market drop. But once you have the Heist Locker unlocked, all you need to do from here on out is every time you level up, Wakano's shop will completely reset. And in the description below, I will have this regex for you. This regex is going to show all lockpicking, all demolition, and all deception contracts. These are going to be the ones that we want to buy. Now, these are going to cost an orb a chance unless they are blue, which then they're going to cost an alchemy. And it's up to you if you want to buy the ones for an alchemy, but you definitely want to get at least the ones with a chance cost. This shop will reset and you'll find anywhere between maybe 1 to 5 in here every level. It really depends a little bit on luck. So the total contracts that you're going to have by the time you get to the end of your leveling experience will vary slightly. Once you've bought all the contracts, you just simply keep leveling as normal. And every time you level up, this shop will reset and you just come back and buy more. Now, the question is, how do we sustain the chances in the alchemies? Well, the alchemies you can't. So it's up to you how many you want to spend. But I will tell you this, you will get probably around 50, 60 alchemies from doing all these contracts at the end. So feel free to just spend all of your alchemies. Don't worry about needing to have alchemies for when you get to maps. You'll have plenty of bindings and plenty of alchemies. So you are good to just spend all of them here. But the chances, on the other hand, we do want to try and do our best to sustain all these. Now, the best I could say is make sure on your filter you have single chances and single fusings actually shown, because some filters might not have them and might only have 2 or 3 plus, but make sure you have all chances and all fusing show, as it's going to be very important. The other thing you do, and the reason I'm mentioning fuses, is because if you go to any general vendor in a town, you can actually trade for chances and they cost 1 fusing. So if you get a drop of 2 to 3 fusings, it's the same thing as getting a drop of 2 to 3 chances. Now, you might not have perfect sustain. I am going to assume you're only going to be able to buy about 70 to 80% of the contracts that actually do show up through the filter. And that should be more than fine. That is still going to get you over 100C very, very easily. Another thing you could do, if you have friends, is you can actually ask your friends for their chance orbs. If they're not going to do strategy, if they're not going to do heist, well, there's not really much of a use for chances other than buying a few skill gems at the start of your leveling experience in Act 3. So you should fairly easily be able to get chances either from your guildmates or your friends if they have any excess and if they don't need them. That might be another good consideration to be able to sustain them. But even if you're doing this solo, even if you're doing this solo self-found, you shouldn't have too much of a problem buying the majority of your contracts. Now, when do we actually want to go and run them? Well, we want to wait until all the way right before Katava. We don't want to do this after Katava, because then we're going to have 30% less resistances and you might not be res capped. Right before Katava is a really good time to do it, because most of the contracts you're going to buy are going to be around level 40, level 50, and all the way up to 60 as you get until Act 9, Act 10. And the thing about these contracts is you're going to be super over leveled. So all the monsters are going to have like no health. It'll be really easy to kill them and you should have no issues dying. And then if you go in order from the lowest to the highest, you actually gain a few levels. So you'll probably be around level 64, 65, maybe even 66 walking into maps, when typically you're maybe 62, 63, depending on how much you kill in the last act and how much you die. So this actually gave you a call bit XP as well. And if you do all of the easy ones first, you'll get a little bit more XP. So the later ones, which are around 60, will be a little bit easier since you'll be over leveled for them as well. Another thing you could also do if you are struggling to sustain fusings and chances is you can actually just run some of them early on. So for example, let's say I am in the middle of Act 7 and I just leveled up and I actually don't have any more chances. Well, I just very quickly come to the Rogue Harbor and do a few lockpicking and a few deception contracts. And this actually give me quite a few fusings and quite a few chances. So it might not be a bad idea to just do like 1 or 2, and you'll probably get maybe around 5 to 10 of chances and fusings. That should last you for quite a while, and it should be able to keep you ahead of the curve in terms of costs for quite a few more levels and probably for the rest of the experience. There's also going to be a little bit of currency. So for example, if you're playing a Fist to Cold conversion build and you want Hirmsar, which is around 5C, it might not be a bad idea in the middle of Act 7 or so, once you have a few contracts to build up, just to spend maybe 10, 20 minutes, run those contracts, get yourself 5 chaos really quickly, and then be able to buy some sort of leveling unique or buy some build enabling unique super early on to have an easy time the rest of the way, and to get it before the price hikes happen, because typically around the end of day 1 is when all the uniques slightly spike in price, versus in the first few hours where basically nobody has money. They're effectively for free, and the only people that can realistically buy them are people who are pulling money or people who are actually doing heist for a few early chaos. Now, if we want to look at how many contracts you're going to get, you are going to get maybe around an inventory and a few more. This is how many we are going to use for the purpose of this video to showcase how good this is. This is all the contracts that you would get from Act 6 all the way to the beginning of Act 9. I'm purposely not collecting any contracts for Act 9 and Act 10 just to showcase what bad luck might look in this, and to simulate what if you got your rogue marker drop at the end of Act 7 or at the end of Act 8 super, super late into this whole thing and in a position where you wouldn't actually get all your contracts. What would the money still look like? So what we're going to simulate in terms of loot here is going to be actually quite substantially less than what you would get, assuming you got your markers fairly early into Act 6 and you bought contracts all the way through. The way I'm going to be doing these is I'm going to be doing the lockpicking and the deception contracts first, and I'm going to be doing the demolition ones next. The problem with demolition is it's really slow once you trigger lockdown. And the best way to do this is to probably spam about half of these really quickly, get to the end, pick up the big reward, open up all the small chests that I can along the way, open up any big chests. We want to get as close as we can to triggering lockdown without triggering it so we can steal the big reward at the end and build up a big pile of rogue markers. Because once we have a really big pile for the second half of these contracts, I won't actually need to run to the end, steal the big items for the rogue markers and trigger lockdown. And if we do all of our demolitions ones last, then we should have enough pennies to never have to steal it. We should have enough to be able to start the remaining of our contracts and be able to just immediately walk out without triggering lockdown and save ourselves a lot of time, because demolition lockouts take forever to actually do in comparison to lockpicking and in comparison to deception. The other thing to mention while you're doing these is obviously you want to get all the small and the big chests along your way, but you also want to loot the 2 safes at the end of the whole thing where the big item that you get to sell to the vendor for rogue markers is, because those safes actually give you a chaos fairly often. I would say maybe 50% of the contracts you'll do, there will be a chaos from one of the 2 saves at the end. But you could also skip them if you don't want to wait for the animation, as is a fairly slow animation, and you'd only maybe lose out on 10-ish, maybe 15-ish chaos in total. Okay, so let's talk about the loot. Now, one thing I realized I messed up was that the filter I was using was for lockpicking, demolition, and deception. And instead of deception, it should have been perception. So because of that, I actually was missing about 1/3 of all the contracts I should have actually had. But with that said, I feel like this is going to be an even stronger case of how good this is, considering 1, I didn't pick up a single perception contract, and 2, again, we didn't pick up any contracts from Act 9 and Act 10 to simulate what this would look like if you didn't immediately get pennies in Act 6. Another thing I want to mention as well, because we did this, we didn't actually get many chaos recipe items because we didn't buy the Act 9 and Act 10 contracts, which is where most of the chaos recipe item level bases come from. So with that said, we still end up getting 94 chaos. Now, this did take me about 2 hours or so. I wasn't sitting here doing a full focus. I did go eat. I did go do some other things, but it did take me about 2 hours in total with all the time that I did have. And as you can see, we have quite a lot of everything. We have 22 bindings and 16 alchemies, which is going to be plenty for sustaining your maps. And then we also have 38 Orbs, which is going to be great for once you get the red maps to get map completion. We also end up getting 30 regrets. So if you need to respec a portion of your tree to swap to your build or whatnot, you'll have them, or you can just sell these for about 2/3 of a chaos on day 1, or about a chaos each if you wait a little bit longer. So this could technically be another 30 chaos if you don't need it. And we end up getting 8 stack decks as well, which end up going for about a chaos or so towards the end of day 1. Overall, you pretty much get stacked on everything you kind of need to be able to play the game, going into maps, and you don't really have to worry about currency, especially jewelers, fusings, and chromatics. You'll have plenty of them to be able to change around any sort of items you might pick up. The other thing to mention is we did get a few rare drops. I did end up getting a vulnerability on hit pair of gloves, which end up having life on them. These will probably sell for 5, maybe even 10C on day 1. And we also got a pair of +2 AoE gloves with decent resistances. A Aura bot might consider buying these from you, especially since +2 items are a little bit rare at the start. And you might be able to get another 5 chaos or so for these. We also end up getting 3 5 links. These should definitely go for at least 2, 3, 5 chaos, and you might even want to use one of them yourself on day 1. So you can say this another 15 chaos. I did get a 5 link weapon. These are a little bit harder to sell. You might still get 2 or 3 chaos for them, but these 5 link chest plates will definitely go for at least 5 chaos on day 1. So that's another 15C. And we did get a porcupine. This porcupine card is worth probably 6, 7, 8 chaos on its own. So if we include all of the 5 links, if we include the gloves, if we include the porcupine, and if we include like the regrets, if you actually want to sell them, I made probably around 140, 150 chaos. And again, this is trying to simulate bad luck and assuming that we didn't immediately get every single contract. And 2, this is me actually inting slightly with no perception contracts. So this could have been even better. This probably could have been around 200 chaos or so had I had the perception contracts. The other thing to mention as well is all of the chaos recipe items that we end up getting. Now, if you don't know what the chaos recipe is, well, if you vendor one of each item between a certain level bracket, you will actually get a chaos. And if you vendor a full set of unidentified gear, you get 2 chaos. So what we could do with the contracts that we get from Act 9 and Act 10 is we can pick up all of the bases that are within the correct item level bracket for chaos recipe and then actually make a lot of extra money. So if we want to theorize that we made about 140 chaos, if we were to have gotten Act 9, Act 10 contracts, we actually would have made probably around 200 chaos. And if I got all my perception contracts, this would have been around maybe 250, maybe even 300 chaos pretty easily. Now, how do we do the chaos recipe? Well, there's 2 things you're going to need. One, if you come to Filter Blade and you come to the endgame rare items section, all you have to do is simply come to the add custom or hide custom rule. And all you're going to do is just come to the highlight rares by item slot. Here, there's going to be a section for chaos recipe items for each type. So there's going to be helmets, gloves, boots, and so on and so forth. And what I personally did here was I set the background to something that makes them painfully obvious. Nothing in my filter has a red background like this. So if I see something with a red background, it's really, really obvious that it's for chaos recipe. And all you have to do is just simply pick up all of these, shove them into a quad tab like this. And then what we could do is we could use the chaos recipe enhancer to make this really easy. So the way you would set this up is you put your account name in here, you put your PoE session ID in here, you set what league you're in, and then all you have to do is just set that you want to do chaos recipe. You can say your threshold to whatever you want. So for example, if this is set to 5, it won't tell you until you have 5 sets. I just have mine set to 1, so it always just shows me. And then all we have to do is simply just open up the overlay. We click fetch. This will look through all of your stashes. Now you do need to have your stashes named 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If you name a dump, for example, it won't actually look into it. It has to be numerical. And then all you have to do is just click fetch. And as you can see, we have 1 full set in here. We would just simply click the stash button. Now, if you have this issue of it not covering your stash tab properly, you just click the edit button up here, stretch it so it is properly fitted over your current stash, and it'll very just clearly show you which items we need to take out. So we take out this chest plate, take out these gloves, we take out this helmet, the amulet, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, as we pick them up, the recipe will unhighlight those boxes to know that they're gone. Unfortunately for me, I think with control clicking it messed it up a little bit, but now we would have a full set of gear. As you can see, it does not detect any other recipes in our stash, and we simply just hide it, go over to Lily, and all we do is we just vendor. And as you can see from vendoring all this together, we get 2 chaos. Now this would very easily give you somewhere around 50 to 100 chaos, depending on how lucky you get on items. The difficult part is the jewelry, the chest plates and the gloves and so on. Those are the easy part, but it's kind of RNG down to how many rings and amulets and belts you get to be able to fulfill all of your recipe needs. But it should add another 50 to 100 C, and you can do this into maps as well. This isn't something just for heist. You can keep doing chaos recipes further and further into maps to actually make a little bit more money. And it's with the tool, it's actually super easy. Personally, I've been super against using the chaos recipe enhancer and just doing the chaos recipe in general. But for the purpose of this video, I went and downloaded it just to show people how I do it, as some people like doing it. Actually, personally, I just realized I've been inting myself for the past few seasons when I've been doing the strategy. This makes it so brain dead between having Filter Blade show you which items to pick up and between the chaos recipe enhancer just doing the work for you, that I've basically been missing 2 divines worth of currency, since divines are about 50, 60 C each day 1, 2 divines worth of currency day 1 for free. That basically takes no extra effort. So I would really, really encourage you to use it yourself. And if you want to, there'll be a link below in the description on where to get it. That's all I really have to say for this. I really like doing heist at the start of each season. Again, it only takes you about 2 to 3 hours to do this, and you walk out of this with 5, 6 divines. For day 1 of this just being raw currency, it's way too good not to do unless you have a strategy that wants you to immediately rush to your 16 maps and to do mapping. If that is the case, and if your build doesn't need any build enabling uniques, obviously you should just skip this and go to tier 16 maps. But if you're either a casual player that doesn't have a specific strategy in mind, or if your strategy requires multiple days to go by until the economy kicks in, such as maybe doing Legion and selling splinters, or doing essences or beasts, which don't really sell day 1 or day 2, or doing any sort of other strategy that requires consumables such as scarabs or sextants that aren't really available day 1, it's really worth it to just go and do this rather than immediately just rush tier 16 maps. And even if you are rushing tier 16 maps, this isn't the worst thing ever, since it only takes 2 to 3 hours to do. It might be really worth it depending on your build. That's all I really have to say in this video. If you guys enjoyed it, I hope to see you guys in the next one. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them below or come talk to me on Twitch. I stream every single day and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next video.